Hello, class. The focus this week is on learning environments, and we're going to look at two different learning environments. We're going to look at education, and we're going to look at workplace environments. So you think education, school, you think workplace, more training and development, or what you may receive at your work. We're also going to look at three different formats for each of those. We have the online, like this course. We have a blended, which is a combination of online and face-to-face, and then we also have a face-to-face learning environment. As always, we start off with our andragogy model and looking at the outer two rings of that model. What we're looking at for this week is the institutional growth. When we think about the growth, or the goal and purpose for the learning, is then based off enhancing the company or organization we work for, and the individual growth where we are pursuing these courses for our own benefits. We're also looking at the situational differences and how those learning environments impact the way adults learn and the strategies that we use. I've included 4 different articles this week that look at everything from the strengths and weaknesses of different learning environments to different methodologies that we can use, talking about how post-secondary institutions address the need for adult learners, and just this rise in the adult learners in higher education. When we think about different methodologies that we can use to teach courses, we can think about each of those is influenced by a different learning environment. If we look at a lecture in an online course, here's the lecture. You can choose to listen to it. You can choose not to listen to it. Ideally, it should be short and something that you can watch at your convenience. In a face-to-face class, it will be something that, maybe you tune into, maybe you don't, but again, it shouldn't be a great component of the course. When we think about lecture, it needs to be more interactive. We want adult learners to be engaged in that. So depending on our work environment, that can be challenging. When we think about audio-visual, what technologies, what visual aids are we going to use, again, to keep our learners engaged? Then you also can use simulations. It's something that you see a lot more in training and development, where there'll be different simulations. For example, some of you may deal with this in your CTE field, where they can run through a computer simulation of how to perform a task before beginning that task. Case studies are huge in higher education. When we think about the use of case studies to teach the concepts, I know a lot of MBA programs are based solely off case studies, where you would read different case studies and then apply the knowledge to the course. And in doing so, you look at those case studies and you read them beforehand, then you come in and you go about discussing the matter. Games, everybody always talks about video games and those type of things, or games in general as a way to enhance the learning environment. Again, this is something that can be done more so in education than in training and development or the workplace. Role play is something you certainly see in training and development, where you put yourself in different roles and then you play out how it goes. And especially in hands-on or in a training environment, you certainly see hands-on learning, whereas on-the-job training, self-directed learning, and apprenticeship, and all of those need to be in that face-to-face environment. Or you could use a blended approach where you meet, discuss what's going on, they observe the training, and then you have additional resources online. A key component when we think about either of these learning environments is the transfer of learning. And if it's near, meaning that whatever you're learning has to be applied to that particular job. As a good example, I would think, is welding or hairdressing. You can teach somebody all you want about how to cut hair, but they really need to practice that on an individual or some type of model or dummy that you have in-house. Whereas FAR training is more learning just general knowledge type of things, general principles, where you don't have to actually be there. If you're going through a HR course on sexual harassment, you don't need to actually be in that environment to see that. You can learn that online and take the knowledge from there. So we look at some considerations in a physical environment. surprisingly, seating arrangement is important in how you design the classroom. Is it going to be your typical classroom? Is it going to be group format? What is the classroom design when you walk into that environment? Where's the location of this environment? I think it's a challenge a lot of education, or I guess higher education is dealing with, is adults don't have the time to come on campus and take classes. So for example, if this entire program was face-to-face, there probably wouldn't be a program because there just wouldn't, adults don't have the time to do that. Also looking at the materials on hand, what materials do you need? What can they have? And the different technologies as well. You don't want to overburden somebody with technologies that you're not going to use, but at the same time, you don't want to not have your students be able to do something because they don't have the proper technology or proper training. When we look at a online environment, again, you think about the materials. What materials are you going to use for a class? What work? What's effective with adult learners? Again, if you're going to have a lecture, it needs to be short. You need to chunk material so you can read an article, then you can watch a video, then you can do the assignment. It needs to be chunked. You've seen a lot more learning management systems like we use here in this class. You also have the access to the material. There's a lot of different concepts in regards to this. Do you make everything available at once? Do you spread it out? How do you allow students to access that material? Then also, what technology do you use? For example, here at Athens State, we have to be specific about what technology we're going to require, and that has to be right there on that Start Here page. Then we also look at the level of interaction. Obviously, in a face-to-face class, you can have an entire class that is discussion. In workplace or training and development, where you can pull in people's experiences, use those case studies. In a hybrid, you can do there's less interaction, but you have the opportunity for individuals to learn the material in that blended in the online environment, then bring it to the face-to-face. In an online, that's a lot more challenging, especially in an asynchronous course where there's no live interaction. Whereas in synchronous, you do have that potential for live interaction. It's something we talk about all the time here at Athens State. Should we have more synchronous learning sessions? And again, it always goes back to that same dilemma. Our adult students are busy. They don't have maybe the opportunity to all meet online one night a week for 2 or 3 hours and discuss issues. So it's a battle that we go back and forth on. Whereas if you're in the workplace, you can have a synchronous learning session where everybody meets at 9 o'clock in the morning to discuss whatever it may be. Some strategies that we want to consider when we're in that education environment is, again, the idea that you could argue, I guess, now that no students want 50 minutes of lecture. They want discussion. They want the opportunity to share their experience. Collaboration is huge. And it's more of an equal. Everybody's equal. When you all are working just like I am, you are an expert in your field, and you bring that knowledge in. It's important to collaborate and share those. Interactive courses where you get to interact with material and you are an active learner. Again, building off those prior experiences and being able to bring those to the program is huge. I went through a MBA program, and we had some adult learners and we had some college students just fresh out of college. And there's a huge difference in the discussions, the approach they took to learning or even sharing the material because they had that previous knowledge. The use of case studies, again, is a good strategy in education. You don't see it as much in training and development, actually applying the material. For adults that get an education, they're trying to better their life. And ideally, they're learning information or applying the content in a real-world situation that will benefit them. And that's where you can focus on how it relates to that student's specific workplace. How does it benefit them? And then also self-directed learning, where it's not as much as the teacher teaching everything and telling you exactly what to do. It's more so the teacher is the guide, and you go about the learning process. And when we think about that, again, we go back to the andragogy principles. I know I probably said it 100 times, but when you look at any material related to adult learning, it always ties into those 6 principles. The number of adults in education is increasing. The 2 articles touch on that, and there is a change in not only when individuals are going to college, but also the number of adults coming back to college. And because that, schools are designing more programs and courses for adult learners, and in doing so, adults want flexibility. The advantage of online, obviously, is you can access this material whenever you want. You can work at your convenience. And when we have jobs, we have other things in our life. We can't sit down every day from 8 to 9 and take a class, or then 9 to 10. So it has to be modified to fit in our environment and our schedules. We also have the workplace environment is different, and it's usually that combination of institutional and individual growth. Companies offer training and development because it enhances the product, their product, but also it allows for individual growth. And there is that increase of online training and less of face-to-face training. I think I've talked before about my brother who does training and development, and he just recently had a 5-hour training course that was entirely online, and the entire session was online. There is an increase in just-in-time training where you need the training. You don't learn the material until you need it. And it's a benefit for the employees, because if you don't need to learn it, you don't learn it. But once you need it, it's right there because it's online and it's always accessible. It can be more customizable. And you're also seeing organizations partnering with schools and offering programs or courses that are beneficial to both the employee and the employer. And as I said, this is usually in the workplace called training and development, and you're thinking about develop expertise or skills, and you're thinking about also common knowledge. When you get hired at a company, there's all this training you go through, and a lot of that is being put online. So again, it's for your convenience. And the whole idea is that you get, as an organization, that you enhance the level of skill your employees have. And as an employee, the idea is that you gain these skills so you're able to provide or produce more, be more productive, and ideally move up the ladder. Some questions to think about with workplace environments is what is the motivation for employees to learn? And sometimes it's not there. Sometimes they don't necessarily see the benefit. What is the motivation for employers to offer training? And again, it goes back to the idea that you want a really good workforce. You want people that are highly skilled, highly trained, always compared to, say, sports where in the off season, a football team will train constantly so that they're more prepared for the next year. Same type of idea here. And then this is an interesting question. Should employees have a say in what they learn? And obviously they probably should, because if you're not interested, if you're not motivated, going back to those principles, you're probably not going to be too into the actual learning. I've included some information here about a few different training processes and the different approaches that individuals can take as far as what options are available to them. The last component I want to talk about is I came across this. It's from the website of Rasmussen's College about online versus traditional education, and it makes several really good points and certainly worth your time to read through as far as what's better and what you need to know. I still remember my first time taking an online class just being like, what is going on in here? But this does provide some good information. The idea of this article for them is that they're trying to lure people to their for-profit school that offers online degrees, so they're going to talk about the value of an online education. But certainly worth looking through and gives you a little more perspective on the different considerations for online learning.